Scale, exit, repeat.
You're listening to Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, Serial Entrepreneur Secrets Revealed, podcast, live show, YouTube, wherever you're getting this. You might not know this, but we do a live show every Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern, and you can join us on stage. It's an app called Clubhouse, and we are a startup club. We run the club, the largest club on Clubhouse called Startup Club. And today's topic is all about the ultimate checklist. The what is it you do once you have an idea to go from idea to execution? You don't want to be one of those people who always talked about doing something but never acted on it. You really want to think about some of the actions you can take once you've had a good idea. Now, we've been doing a little bit of a series here. If you want, and this is the first time you're listening to this particular topic, you might go back 2 episodes on the podcast and start with that one, because that one, we started by talking about how to come up with $1 million idea, like how to come up with a great business idea and all the techniques that you need to do to find that idea and to rate that idea and to rate it for defensibility, for scalability, and then vet the idea. And then last week we talked about the startup checklist, the ultimate startup checklist. Michelle, I just want to do a confirmation. Michelle's my co-host on this show. Looking forward to going through this checklist today and finishing it off. So last week we talked about the ultimate startup checklist. This is a checklist that we include in the Start workbook. It's the official workbook for Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, a book that has now won 32 global awards. We picked up 2 awards in the last week and a half. And we're now at 32 global awards, the most awarded book in history for entrepreneurship, which is fascinating. And we've got an interesting announcement about that next week. But we also came out with the official workbook, and we put it on sale for the summer for $9.99. And this workbook is a guide to help you start your business. And it's really a step-by-step guide, and you literally just fill out one page at a time. Now, don't think we didn't use AI, because we did, not to write the book or not to write the booklet, but we actually embedded around 10 GPTs for each stage of the startup. So you can actually start your business, come up with the idea, and follow each page along and create that business, get the business off the ground. And as part of that guide, we also include the ultimate startup checklist. I don't think there's a better checklist out there that can really get you started. And the very first one on the list, we covered it last week. We're not going to go in detail with the early ones, but just a quick summary. Write my idea down. Just write it down. And I encourage people to do it on Post-it notes, because we want this to be very succinct. And I like sticky notes because you can put them up. And there's 4 sticky notes. And we're going to talk about that later in the show. But write my idea down. Why am I doing this? Why am I launching this business? Write down my purpose. Identify which space you want to own. I want to be the leader in this particular service in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. You want to try to put a geo around that. You might want to try to think about being smaller at first and trying to own a smaller geo, not necessarily a larger geo. And this is also going to determine what will get you to the front page of Google. And interestingly, but yesterday, Michelle, Michael and I started talking about, it was actually, no, it was a CEO conference that I did this week. And we started talking about not only how you're seen on Google as a startup, you want to be able to envision how you're seen on Google, but how the AI will describe who you are in the context of your product or services. Okay, so I have to add that one to the checklist. This is why this document's amazing, because it's a KD print on demand with Kindle. and we're keep updating the checklist to add more. But how are you perceived on Google was something that mattered tremendously for most businesses, whether you're a local school, whether you're a software platform. People would type in with we own a school in Fort Lauderdale, and they'll type in best Montessori school in Fort Lauderdale. Guess what our title tags are? Best Montessori school, Fort Lauderdale. And they have a perfect match. And we actually have, my wife has done a phenomenal job, and the school is the highest rated school on greatschools.org in Fort Lauderdale. So we can justify that. So, Michelle, I know this was a twist from what we talked a little bit about last week, this notion of trying to envision your startup appearing in AI. And I was just wanted to get your thoughts on that particular concept.
No, I love this. For me, I'm just dying to get some extra time and actually do some research. But I did start doing some research about this already because I think it's a unique time. SEO, as we all know, is very evolved, although it changes a lot and there's a lot of things we don't know. But I think there's an opportunity to really think about that and plan around it. And one thing that I'm reading is that having actually a sheer amount of content is something that's really important again. SEO and Google's kind of moved away from that, and it looks like the LLMs are starting out there. So I think it's really important for us to develop a strategy around that and just start figuring out what works and how we rank in these LLMs. Anybody who looked at the last Prime Day, I think you saw a lot of news out there and analysts talking about how it's really changed the face already of how people are interacting, for example, on Amazon and other e-commerce platforms. I love that as someone who runs a micro brand that is fully e-commerce, that like maybe there's like this opportunity, this moment in time to come up into LLMs and make some good movement, Colin. Can you hear Colin? I think we might have lost him a little. But yeah, like one of the resources that I've been reading, I actually look at Instagram a lot because there's a lot of good subject matter experts. But I look at, and I think people should consider looking at search engine land. That has always been an amazing wealth of information and blog that tends to be very factual and it's good experts. Their roots were in SEO and now they're moving and doing a lot of like good research and subject matter experts that are expanding into AI and the LLMs. Colin. All right, I'm thinking he can't hear us. Colin's actually in case anybody wants to know, he's at a remote area right now. And he is actually up in the lake area of Canada. So he's having intermittent connectivity. Somebody just asked, Richard asked, Richard, it's actually, they might have an Instagram account too, but I look at the articles and at their website, which is a lot of like articles and blog posts. All right. So let's go back to that subject. Colin, can you hear us? If you can hear us, can you blink your mic? All right, let's keep going about the checklist here. But first, I want to invite anyone to the stage here today. We want this to be an interactive session. We do have our checklist, but we also know that there's always things to add to it that you guys or ladies have seen that actually work. So I'm going to add to this. There is a new item, something I was at a conference about, and I read, not read, but they were talking about how there's also new crawl code that you can put on your website, the crawl codes that we've all been doing for years for SEO. There has been released a new protocol for LLMs as well. So along that line, I would add that to our checklist. I know there's a lot going on behind the scenes. I know WordPress, you can add it. It's an LLM crawl command. Shopify, we have a Shopify site. They don't allow it yet, but I've been reading that there is some talk about adding it through some direct collaborations with OpenAI, which we all know is ChatGPT. So for me right now, I think this is a good one to put on our checklist, Colin. It's just there's so much information out there about these things. I'm just trying to figure out what are the best ones that I can go to because I have a full-time job. So I actually don't have a lot of time to just sit here and sit around and study this. Or even more the reason that these blog posts that we do here at Startup Club and that other people do, it's great to share that resource. Okay. So who wants to come to the stage and join in this conversation? Go ahead and raise your hand and we'll bring you on stage. Otherwise, Colin, if you can hear us, what is the next item on the checklist, Colin?
Yeah, and I may have had some Wi-Fi issues. Like my Wi-Fi just went out. We were filming here in my northern location. I'm actually in a
Well,
poker
we
room
talked
in the
about you a
basement.
little bit. I told him that you were at a remote location and you were having intermittent connections. So we're going to give you a pass here.
Okay, so where did you lose me then? Where'd you lose me,
Yeah,
Michelle?
when you told me to start talking, I was talking and I gave my suggestions about AI and LLMs in search. I gave a resource, which is search engine land, and I gave a little tip about
Got it.
how people can add new crawl code to their website.
So you didn't hear about the bathtub story.
Now we heard nothing about bathtubs. They just
Okay, then
have
let
been
me pick it up
hearing
there.
me.
All right, perfect. Let me pick it up there. I've been down for about a minute here. All right. I was searching for a bathtub for one of our Airbnbs, a 60-inch bathtub, and I wanted it to be as deep as possible, the tub to hold as much. And I didn't want to pay too much money for it as well. So I set the criteria up in Perplexity. I like Perplexity because Perplexity actually gives you a rating, two positive features and one negative. And what it's doing is it's pulling from reviews, it's pulling from articles, it's pulling from press releases, it's pulling content. See, AI doesn't like to talk to AIs. It doesn't like AI generated information. It likes original content. And when you get original content out there on the internet, that's gold. And that's where it's going. And these hacks that we've had on Google, the domain hack or title tag, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you shouldn't go down the path and use some of those hacks, okay? Because the reality is they're still probably important. But even Google's changing now with their AI. How are you as a startup perceived on AI? This is the question that you need to ask yourself. And by the way, we're going to add that to the checklist. And I love it because we can do that. Going back to traditional PR strategy, and this is something that, like a lot of companies, we always want the quick growth hacks, right? We want to be able to do this and do that. But content is king. I know Google said that for years, but it continues to be king. And by the way, we have on Startup Club now opened up the website for guest authors. And we've had about 4 or 5 guest authors on the site, and almost every one of those articles from these guest authors have hit the first page of Google and are probably being absorbed by AI as well. So if you have something you want to share with the community, I know it's great for you to come on stage here. It'd be great today if you raise your hand, come on stage and talk about some of the things you've done after you have that idea, that spark in your mind, some of the things you've done to get your business off the ground and get it started. So that's the summary, Michelle. I pretty much said that twice, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
said a bit of that too. What I've been seeing, or not just me, I don't consider myself an expert, but reading from experts is we could be shifting back to lots of content. Like the AI wants lots of content. The other thing I've been reading is to front load, for example, your title of an article or whatever with your SEO terms. That at least right now, and we know it's changing very quickly, that's how the LLMs are scanning people, Colin.
Right.
For me, one thing I'm doing at paw.com, paw.com, it's about dogs, obviously, and we sell high-end dog beds and high-end waterproof blankets that are beautiful. They look beautiful on decor. Is I'm actually visualizing kind of like a quiz, an interactive quiz, because we have more than one type of dog bed now. We like have 4 of them that kind of like matches up dogs with what kind of recommended bed. So I'm trying to think of strategies where I repurpose content or create content in this case that leads people down that kind of interactive problem solving query. I believe that a lot of the queries, at least what I've heard, are all around recommendations and problem solving, which is a lot different than your standard SEO. But given how people are forming their prompts, Colin.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so with the checklist, we've talked about write the idea down on a sticky note, write down your purpose, identify the space you want to own, determine your what will get you on the front page of Google, and now determine what will get you in the queries answered on AI when people are looking for your product or service. And the next is name the idea. And that's a lot of fun. I talked about a story last week about how we named Sunset Escape, which was a beach house. And literally before the offer was signed, we were brainstorming the names as we drove home. And we ended up getting the place. And you do see beautiful sunsets at this place. So we called it Sunset Escape. And the next thing we did is we checked the trademark database. I was in the car checking the database. In the United States, it used to be called the TESS database, TESS, but if you search for that term, it'll come up. I know they just call it the trademark database in the US and Nuance in Canada, NUANS. And we want to check the trademark. It's free to do, it takes 1 minute. And I've worked with companies that have not done this and have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and have to change their name a year or two later because they simply just didn't check the trademark before they went down the process of launching. And it can be very disruptive and cost a lot of money. But I would check the database first and then register the domain name. So we registered the domain name sunsetescape.club in the car. And then I was thinking, okay, let me just text my graphics guy to get me the logo made. And it's cool to take an intangible idea and start to make it tangible for a business plan or even to show other potential employees, business partners, what you're talking about here. And you'd be surprised when you put a logo and a letterhead on, and these things don't cost a lot of money. You could even AI generate a lot of the stuff right now. When you do that, it takes something that isn't real. I mean, it was just an idea, and now it looks like a real business. You can now see it and start to visualize it. And that visualization is something that I like to do. So we registered the domain name, and literally we had the logo done by the time we arrived home in Fort Lauderdale. So it's interesting. We actually we had a lot of fun doing that and getting that started and then we created the sign for it for the beach house, and then we also we put it on the boat, which is quite a visible spot on the island, and we also put it on the golf cart. 'Cause there's no cars on this particular island, just golf carts, and it started to come together, and naming it is a critical piece.
Yeah,
Michelle?
I do that actually for products as well, product names, because we like to brand our product names. I do that a lot and it's extremely useful. Look, if anybody's using it on social, for me, we're big on social media. We do a lot of social ads. So it's almost more important to me than domains sometimes. So social and handles in the USPTO, US Trademark PTO database is where I look. But we love doing that because it really like moves along the branding as well, Colin. All right, we don't hear him again. But anyways, that's
Yeah, I'm on mute. I'm on mute this time. This time it's human error. Yeah, you got to get those social channels. TikTok is critical, depending on your audience. But for the younger audience, we did that with Startup Club. We went on TikTok about a month ago, or not a month, sorry, about 8 months ago, and it's been taking off. We've got almost 3,000 people following us now, and we've watched some pretty interesting videos too that we filmed sometimes during these shows. But we had even Joe Foster, who's the founder of Reebok. We taped 30 separate interviews or little shorts with him as well, that kind of stuff. All right, that's great. Social channels, got to lock them in early on, and it's nice to have them consistent. Join an incubator. There's a lot of free ones in your local community. Write your elevator pitch. What's a 30 seconds pitch of your company? What's your business? And you got to be ready for that because you never know the moment when you do bump into someone and they ask you, and oh, that's interesting. I know of an investor who might be interested in that, in talking to you. That sounds like a fascinating concept. I put apply for a SCORE mentor. We interviewed Bridget Weston, Michelle, and I on this show, and she runs an organization called SCORE in the United States. It's for Americans, and it's run by the SBA. They have 10,000 volunteers, and they make the case that you can increase your chances of success by 3 times, 3 times by getting a mentor. And I would add in that too is by getting into a community or an incubator, surrounding yourself with good people who can help you vet your idea, make your idea even better and stronger. In the booklet, we have a section on, and you can read this in the book too. You can do this. You don't need the booklet to do this. We have a GPT for it too, if you want to run the GPT in the booklet. But we have one on rating your idea or vetting your idea, and you can rate the scalability of it, and you can rate the defensibility of that idea. I like the GPTs actually for this particular thing because it sometimes can be a little ethereal to figure out, okay, is this idea really scalable or not? And what do I mean by that? So I talked about the school that we own. At one time, we were looking at expanding it, and we're at capacity at about 100 students. And we're like, let's add a floor, let's buy some property around it. But every solution was millions of dollars and years of regulatory work to do to get it approved. So we ended up ultimately saying we can't scale that business. It's a very tough business. And then we had another business Michelle and I were running called .club, which is a domain registrar business. And we registered about 1 million domain names and ended up selling that to GoDaddy, which was the .club extension. You can see why I really like .club and have an affinity to it. All right. The next is I want you to think about writing out your personal value statements. And these are the guardrails by which you operate your business on. I got a really good GPT on this one. You can cheat and go to personalvaluesai.club or .com. Sorry, personalvaluesai.com, and you can run a GPT and that'll help you create your values. What's nice about that one, Michelle, is it looks at your values and then compares your company to other companies. Once you establish your own values, they're not necessarily 100% the values of the organization, but they're pretty close. And I see how they translate very nicely between your personal and your organization. And these are values that you're going to hire and fire on. And the earlier you set this up, the stronger it will be. Next thing you'll do some of the basic stuff, register the business, set up a business bank account. You might get business cards, update your LinkedIn page, that kind of stuff as well. And then we're going to have to start searching for funding. Oh, that's a fun one. That's a fun topic, isn't it? One of the things about the incubator that we have in South Florida, and I'm certain this is replicated in many locations, is they do about 10 sessions, one on strategy, one on the pitch. I do the one on strategy, and a friend of mine does the one on the pitch. And in that session, at the end of the 10 weeks, you pitch to investors. Get out there and pitch to as many pitch competitions as you can. It doesn't matter how many times you lose. The reality is you're being exposed. You're getting your name out there. You're practicing. You're getting questions. When you are in front of the audience, you'll be surprised at how many people afterwards bump into you in the coffee line or something like that and say, "Oh, I liked your presentation. Did you think about this?" Or I know somebody who might be interested in investing in that company. You're going to really want to perfect the pitch as well. And that's something that there's a chapter on the book. There's not a lot of time to go through everything in detail here. Okay. There's a checklist. It doesn't mean you can just do it all in 1 minute. But there's a chapter on the book called Perfecting the Pitch. And the lady who did that is the one who teaches that at NSU, the Alan Levans Center, that incubator program I'm talking about. But she also has won numerous pitch competitions.
Hey,
And she's great. Yeah.
Richard was asking what CEO event were you referencing
Okay, it's
when you
one
were
with
just
a company
talking?
called Rhythm Systems. This is something we talk about in scaling, and it was the event. It was a Zoom event, and it was on AI, and I was asked to speak. And I thought it's funny stuff. You'd be surprised at how many people are not using AI to help them run their business. And if they are, they're like, yeah, I was using Copilot and I used some Chat GPT I would say about 60-70% of the audience didn't know about deep research, which is a key aspect now of using AI to help get some data intelligence, potential lead sources, that kind of stuff. It was talking about the latest and greatest AI video stuff, that videos you can make. Look, AI is absolutely part of the startup journey now. It really is. It's made it so that we have just a little bit of knowledge can make you an expert in 100 areas. A law, for instance, and I do a lot of legal work now. We run through AI. In fact, I create a custom GPT for every legal contract that we have, so that I can go in and ask it questions, and it's ready to give me the answers. It also stores the contract there too, which is nice, because usually I can't find the kind of disorganized, but when I got my GPTs are not. But that's a private GPT, just to be clear. That's not a public one like we have with the workbook. So it was a good conference on AI. We need to do some more sessions. Maybe we'll jump into that one next week or the week after. The next one is create a persona for my customer. Okay. A persona. Okay. Who am I selling to? And if you're doing B2B, be careful you don't say, oh, I'm selling to Vodafone or Verizon or AT&T. No, they're not your customer. When we were selling to those companies, I'm using this as the example, with a prior company that we had, we discovered that our customer was a mid-level executive, and then we began to understand that customer, and we understood that their biggest fear was being fired from their current job. And the biggest fear they had would be that they buy our services, we do a migration, and something goes wrong in the migrations. And if anybody's been in IT, migrations are like, they could be like very difficult to do and very scary, quite frankly. So we came up with a model where we guaranteed in full payments. We had a nearly unbearable brand promise that we came up with. And this is something that I talk about and start, but really go deep on scale. And that's creating an X factor for your business. And I was really debating when we, and this is on the list too, if I was really debating whether or not I should put the X factor in a startup because it's so hard to find. What do I mean by X factor? Think Domino's Pizza, 30 minutes are free. Nobody could deliver a pizza in 30 minutes until Domino's came along. Okay, but they had to re-engineer the systems. They had to re-engineer their ovens and do things differently. Another, if sticking on the food line, another one fun one was cookiedelivery.com. And they realized that they were a bakery in Texas somewhere, and they realized we're competing with all the other bakeries. But what they did differently is they created a truck so that they could bake the cookies on the way while they're delivering them. So they came out piping hot when they were delivered. That's an X factor. I can go into it again in more detail, but we have a full chapter in the book. It's a great thing to try to understand and at least be aware that you want to come up with that X factor, which is something that is unique and different in your marketplace that only you'll be able to deliver. Okay, now someone might copy you, others copy Domino's, right? But they were there first, and then after you've got your X factor, coming up with the nearly unbearable brand promise, the 30 minutes or free. That's what we're talking about here with the X factor and the nearly unbearable brand promise. All right, ready to keep going down the list. I think the next one's create a website, and it's getting a lot easier, especially with AI. A lot easier. There's a lot of platforms out there. My son does real estate, and he connected with a real estate platform, and he did a lot of stuff with that. Just out of a fun note, Google VO3, and then there's other ones like Halu and other video sites like Sora. So what you can do now is you can upload a photo and create like a movie trailer, basically the quality of a movie trailer for that photo. And he does TorontoPreconstruction.com, and we just started this last week, and I'm like, you can just, instead of being the same as everybody else, do a full like movie trailer. Just use the AI, upload the photo, and it'll create this like movie trailer. And they're phenomenal. And you can say have the sun setting at this time and whatnot. And you really want to perfect your prompts by I go through ChatGPT to create the prompts, and then I pop them into into VO3, Google's VO3. All right, we're jumping around a lot here, Michelle. I
Yeah,
hope
we
you're
are.
okay. It's
I
like
am
taking a fire
okay.
hose, isn't it? Like you're thinking of a
It
startup and you
is.
got all these things, but again, this is checklists. And there's the booklet that just shows you and has each exercise, and you can fill it each piece. And we put it down for $10 on the internet. It's called Start. It's a Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat official workbook. If you haven't got the book, obviously, I recommend you do get it. Thankfully, Kyle here, see him on stage here. He's the one who runs the incubator in Fort Lauderdale.
Hi,
And
Kyle.
yeah, but he's also been the one who's been applying for the awards, 32 global awards for the book, and couldn't have done it without him. All right.
Awesome.
Next is set your first stage gate. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Set your first stage gate. This is a SMART goal: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. Okay. Just double checking sound, Michelle. My Wi Fi went back on right now.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. So, you want to, I'm just going to click recording here. I'm just going to start the recording again. So, just give me 30 seconds here, Michelle. Okay. There we go. Setting a stage gate for your business is important for a few reasons. One, there's a lot of stress when it comes to starting a business, a lot of naysayers. And if we can set a specific point in time, at this point in time, we're going to hit X by X date. So it's got to be smart. It's got to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. Okay. If we can do that, if we can hit our deadline, we can get, and we write it out in advance. So we put that on the sticky notes. Okay. We're going to put the stage gate on the sticky notes. Then once we achieve it, then we know we're on the right track. But if we don't achieve it, we either pivot or kill it. Okay. I had a company. I love this idea. Michelle, you remember it. Shareholder blockchain. It was, they talk about it in the book. And we hired some programmers and a lawyer to work on putting this application together. And I gave them 6 months to get an MVP. I set a date. The date came around and they did a demo of what they had, and it was nothing compared to what we had initially talked about, and nowhere near hitting the MVP. And so I decided at that moment to kill, after spending $50,000, it wasn't easy, to kill the project, just to kill the business. It was a good idea. It was a good concept. I still think it's a good concept about managing shares on a blockchain, managing private company shares on a blockchain. And the website's actually still up if you want to see it just for fun, but shareholderblockchain.com. And we didn't hit it, didn't hit the MVP, so we shut it down. So that's one reason, is it does actually reduce a lot of stress, because you can say to people, look, guys, if I don't hit it by this date, then we're going to pivot or kill it. Michelle and I will do that a lot on products. If we don't hit X amount of sales, we don't do this, we'll pivot or kill it. And we remember, we want to be very specific in regards to the timing of that. So specific, I would even say down to the minute. When I'm teaching the class at NSU, I talk about, okay, if you're the last day of the quarter at noon, right? That's how specific I like to get. That's a little bit too much, but you know what? You know what I'm talking about there as well. And identify how much money I need to get at my first stage gate. Okay. 82% of businesses fail, startups fail, because they don't have enough money. Okay. 82%. They can have a great idea, they can have a great person running it, and they can even have the right systems and KPIs that are tracking everything, but they just don't have enough money. So before you go out and spend $50,000, if you don't know how much money you need to get to your first stage gate, then you're really did not launch that business. If you know how much money you need, but you don't have that money and you say, oh, I'll figure it out later, you really should not launch that business. You've got to be able to obtain at least the credit to get to that first stage gate. And then once we get to that stage gate, then we can bring in additional investors. It's very hard to bring investors in on an idea. It's a lot easier to bring investors in on an idea that is in motion and that's proven a concept. And hopefully your stage gate, your first stage gate, will begin to prove the concept. It may be just an MVP, but at least you've got something to show investors. Any other benefits of the stage gate, Michelle, that you can think of?
Yeah, to me, look, the mere exercise of going through it really makes you articulate. And I think if you're not doing this, like your chances of failing are much higher. There's a lot of studies about this, about you could call it goals, you can call it stage gates. It's a version of goals is critically important and it's going to help you succeed. But I'm assuming that most of us aren't doing this in a vacuum by ourselves. Like it's a team exercise, Colin, and the team needs to understand and the team needs to weigh in. And that just going through that exercise with the team is it's really invaluable because everybody's getting on on the same page and we're all clarifying what needs to happen. And I can't tell you, I think that is one of the most challenging things of being a manager or whatever you want to call it in general is, making sure that you plan out without going crazy and that everybody understands what we all need to do together. Like that in itself, that exercise for the team, every time I do it with the team, they're always like so happy to do it. They might not like the outcome or what they have to do, but I think most people want to know what's expected and what time frame so that they can plan accordingly. There's nothing more frustrating than to just be like flying out there in the wind and feeling like you're not being successful or not understanding what's expected of you, Colin.
Yeah, no, I agree. I absolutely agree with you. We we need to set those expectations for our people as well. And I talked about you need to know how much money you need to get to your first stage gate, but you also need to know who you need to get to that first stage gate. And these could be business partners, these could be consultants, these could be people working on Fiverr. We're going to want to identify who we need to get to that first stage gate. And then lastly, we're going to want to set up the right KPIs. If we can't track it, if you're flying blind, it's not, you're never going to get there and you don't know
Not
where you
fun.
are. You don't know where you are,
Very,
right? Like
yeah.
oh, I don't know what my cost of acquisition is. And by
Right.
the
And
way, when
it,
you're
it
in an
may
investor
be,
meeting,
yeah, maybe you think it's great success and then you get in there and you're just like ran over the coals. That's not a very happy way to live your professional life.
but also you're like you're trying to raise money and then if and then you don't know the answer. And that's embarrassing. And a lot of investors will not invest in individuals if they don't know their answer. If you're running, let's say, a digital platform subscription model, recurring revenue platform, sometimes referred to as MRR or ARR, annual recurring revenue or monthly recurring revenue. You're going to want to have certain KPIs in place. Some of those are the cost of acquisition per customer, the average revenue per user, the churn rate, the lifetime value of the customer. And again, we have AI, we have the internet, we have so many ways to help you calculate these things. But we're going to want to have really good KPIs set up as well. And you're going to want to create that investor plan next. And I'm telling you, that's where your AI comes in. This is where AI comes in all the way. Once you've identified your plan and actually suggest you do the 4 sticky note plan, the 4 sticky note plan is in the book. It's also in more detail in the workbook. And you should complete the 4 sticky note plan before you actually do it for your investors, okay? Because this is really your own private plan. And on the first sticky note, you're going to want to do story, and you're going to want to talk about what we talked about here today. What is it? What's your purpose? What is the space you want to own? What's your X factor? What's your first stage gate? And then the second sticky note is going to be people. Who do we need to get to our first stage gate? And the third sticky note is going to be money. How much money do we need to get to our first stage gate? And the fourth sticky note are the KPIs that I talked about and putting those on the sticky note. Then we could even take these sticky notes, pop them into AI, and say, help me write a business plan. And I often encourage it to prompt you when you're doing this prompting. And Michelle, you have a good technique at that one. You say, oh, become a New York Times journalist, or in this case, I guess you could say, I want you to become a seasoned startup expert like Colin C. Campbell or Gary Vaynerchuk or someone or Michelle Van Tilburg, you're going to want to prompt it. You're good at doing that, I noticed.
I'm working on it. A lot of people better than me at it, but it's unbelievable the kind of results you can get with your prompts. And I was actually, this is a true story, on a call for Meta Ads, their account reps, and they have these really cool workshops. Meta was even sharing with people structured prompts for AI to help them with their Google Ads and their creative. This is the world right now, Colin. If I personally feel like if there's one thing you're going to do in your self enrichment and for your career and for your business, is really get good about making and understanding how to make prompts. And there are a lot of people, a lot of really smart people out there that are sharing their prompts. So I strongly encourage people to look at that kind of content and really good at making prompts. Your life will change. I know that's a big promise, Colin, but that's how I feel. I really feel that strongly about it. But we're at the almost at the end
I know,
of,
I know, I still got 10 more. I'll go through them real quick, Michelle.
yeah,
I feel like I'm doing it a disservice though, like
I
when I'm doing
know, I
this.
know.
But that's why you got to get the book or the workbook and really just play with yourself. Developing policies and procedures like SOPs as something comes up. This concept of developing these procedures is important to help you scale your business. And I thought the E-Myth book, I thought he did one of the best jobs of really showing how important it is that when you do develop these things, you're not relying as much on people. So of course, people are key to your business, but if someone leaves, your business shouldn't go under, right? This is something where AI thrives in. Okay, this is another AI spot. Also, setting up contracts like employment contracts, those kind of things. Look, I know a lot of people, and I'm going to advise you go get a lawyer, but I'll tell you what I do for most of the contracts I do, most of the basic contracts I do right now. I don't have a lawyer. I use the AIs. I ask them sometimes I'll go into that persona. Got to come up with the name of persona prompt engineering, where I was working for a federal contract in one of the companies, and I said, I want you to go to the top law. I want you to be the top law firm in the United States that deals with the federal government, and I want you to. And so I described who the person was to the AI first, and then I fed it information, and I had it ask me questions. I've also used it where we pre-write out a strategy or a letter, and then I actually go to the lawyer and have the lawyer vet it over and say, okay, that sounds good, but I would add this and this. And but that reduced some of the legal costs as well. But that's AI. It's all AI again. We're using that. And then again, we want to complete the four sticky note business plan. We want to come up with those mottos and brand promises, the nearly unbearable brand promise, 30 minutes are free, those kind of stuff. You want to create the FAQs for your support. Again, this is AI. AI's Michelle, just very quickly, yeah, you do a lot of AI work around support for your products. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we are using Zendesk, and there's really great plugins. I don't even feel like we've nearly tipped it, but we're going down that path where our customer, what do you call it, knowledge center and responses are all starting to feed into AI. And we all know what AI needs a lot of is data. So that's something that we're already implemented and we're looking at ways to improve it.
Yeah. Great content for blogs and newsletters. You can use AI. There's a way of using AI when you're doing this kind of stuff, but still it makes it original content. One of the things I use AI for is research. And then I will still handwrite out the article, but I'll read the research in advance and I'd like to write it out. Not, I say handwrite it on Word. I get a blank page and I write it out myself. Another thing I've used it for is very carefully is limited editing. Just say, can you clean up the documents? And then and then once they do that, I go through it again and remove any AI isms like hyphens, those kind of stuff. Because really want to have original content when we do this. If you're doing newsletters, like for instance, we do the newsletter every single month on Startup Club. It's really a masterclass. It's a true masterclass on on a particular topic. Every month we come out with it. It's free, absolutely free. We also have the time to sell index. Everything in that document, in that newsletter, is written, but I will use AI to clean it up a little bit, or I'll use AI for research. And I think that can just help accelerate that. But again, you still have to come up with that original content. And then the last step before we close it out here is it's a journey, and we need to learn how to win on this journey. And buying start, scale, exit, repeat, or buying 0 to 1, or buying the E-Myth, or buying some of those startup oriented books. The Lean Startup is another one I really like as well. Really, by learning them, just listening to them. Grab the Audible, download the Audible, and you're driving or something. Just listen to the Audible. It's better than wasting your time listening to news reports about the end of the world and all that. Why don't we just listen to the Audible and learn from it? Entrepreneurship is a trade like any other trade. And the more we master that trade, the better we're going to do. You actually can double your chances of success through knowledge. And this is based on a study that was done through serial entrepreneurs and first time entrepreneurs and their success rates. And you double it. So 100% increase in your chance of success, or you double your chance of success by gaining the knowledge from a book like Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. Gaining the knowledge and learning the stories and understanding the stories and reading about these things or listening to these on Audible, you can increase your chances of success. That's the ultimate startup checklist. We're going to be evolving it, and we're doing a lot of work on it because we're writing some articles for Forbes and Entrepreneur Magazine with the same topic and with the same heading. But I hope you enjoyed that, and it was not overwhelming. And I know it is a lot, and starting a business is complicated. But before you had this checklist, you had this, what do I do next? Maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. And there are probably a lot of things we don't have on that list. And if someone's in the audience and you just want to jump on stage and share with us something we missed from that list, that would be great. But otherwise, just go out and get the booklet. It's on Amazon, $10, or I think $9.99 for the summer. Michelle, any final thoughts before we close it out?
No, I'm just obviously we think checklist, but there is a lot of science behind just like going through this mentally and writing it down and going through it really does help you. And as we were talking about earlier, and if you do it with a team or some mentors or some peers, even better. It really forces us to articulate and think through these things. So I think that's it this week, Colin. And what's up next? I think we had talked about a little 2 week off period during the high time
Yep.
of
And we'll
the
be back in two
summer.
weeks. We'll be back in 2 weeks, although the podcasts, we still publish the podcast once a week because we have multiple podcasts that we do here. You can check that out on your favorite podcast channel. And we'll be talking about catching the wave. It was actually the very first article I wrote for Forbes after GPT came out and after the book had launched, GPT 3.5. And we'll be talking about catching the wave, and I know we'll be talking a lot about catching the AI wave as well, because there are ways of looking at patterns and trends and paradigm shifts and actually literally surfing those waves and capitalizing on it, especially once you hit the tornado, as Jeffrey Moore, another great book, Crossing the Chasm, especially as the tornado begins to hit with the early majority. So we're going to break that down on the next episode of Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. Thank you for listening. Go to startup.club, sign up to that newsletter. You're going to get a masterclass once a month, and it's absolutely free. Everything is free. Everything is absolutely free on startup.club. And we continue to have a lot of free giveaways and things like that from companies that want to help startups. So please go there, sign up to that list, and enjoy. See you all next week.